Yeah, go for it. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Cody. You had a question. What's your real name?
yeah. My real name is Dakota, but I've been called Cody my whole
Oh,
life.
see, okay,
I
easy,
get
cool,
called Dakota as like professional legal stuff.
nice, man. Where are you calling from?
But- I'm in Illinois, Central Illinois.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So my question was, so if you take over a property that's like subject to, what happens to the owners of that property's his equity? So on that example, I think you already answered this, but I just I need you to explain it a
Let's do
little.
it.
But okay, so we had that $300,000 house. If the owner had, say, $120,000 in equity, or yeah, 120,000. So he'd already paid $120,000, and we take over those payments. That would leave us with what, $180,000 left, correct?
Okay, this is a beautiful question. And if is Cashley in here? Cashley's gonna love this because she's gonna know exactly what we're talking about here in a second. So they have a mortgage,
I was
right?
just say what happened. Yeah,
They have a mortgage
yeah.
of one hundred
You
eighty
see what I'm
thousand.
asking?
Okay, yeah,
Here.
yeah. Okay, wonderful, Cashley. You're gonna like this one. So there's a house that's worth 300,000. That's what it's worth currently, and they have a mortgage of 180,000. And we're gonna substitute this $180,000 loan. We're gonna take over these payments, but that leaves us $120,000 in equity, and this is where negotiations come in. You could give them one hundred twenty
And
thousand dollars cash.
that's what the owner of the property's already paid for his mortgage payments.
No, not technically. So let's say, well, actually, no, because he may have bought this house in I don't know, let's say he bought the house 10 years ago for 200 and I don't know, 220,000, but it's appreciated and now it's worth 300,000, right? So
Right.
it could have just appreciated. Maybe he's only paid $40,000 of his. Well, actually, if he bought it for 220, he probably had a down payment. He could have only paid 10, 20, $30,000 of his mortgage up to this point, but appreciation has caused his house now to be worth 300,000. Does
Okay.
that make sense to you?
Yeah. So if I have a kind of a follow up question to that,
Okay.
if he had gotten that house for 300,000, and then kind of fell behind, but he had already made like 120,000 in his mortgage payments, but he still owed 180, and then we come in and say, hey, we can take over your payments. Uh, what happens to his equity, to that money that he already put in? Does he get compensated for that
So yeah,
somewhere,
yeah, we're
one
going to
way or
talk about
another?
that right now. So one, that example is not likely in current situations because if you've already paid off half of your mortgage, pretty much, $120,000 is probably like 20 years of a mortgage payment. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense to you
Okay.
guys because you're like that 20 years. That's probably how it works because you pay more interest at first. So imagine you paid
Right.
for 20 years, your house has gone up in value. There's no way in real estate where real estate doesn't go up over 20 years. But let's just run with your
Right.
example. Let's say you bought a house for 300,000 and he's paid $120,000 of the loan. Yeah, because it's worth 120. So that comes back to this. It just they're a pure negotiation. What we're talking about is when you have equity. This is equity. How do we pay this equity? Now that's up for you to decide. You could come in
Yeah. Sorry,
cash.
that was my overall question. Sorry,
Yes.
I made that
No,
more
it's all good.
complicated
Hey,
than it might
we
be.
love complicated situations. You could pay this cash. No, I mean, that's not very creative, but you could. And if I was going to pay this cash, I wouldn't pay it full value. So maybe you could say, hey, here's $40,000 cash. But they're like, dude, I have 120 grand in equity. Take it or leave it. Go and try to sell that yourself.
Okay.
See what you can get. So you could come in cash and try to get a really good deal. That's one option. Or you could say, let's do a hybrid deal. You hear that, Cashley? Let's do a hybrid deal. And what's a hybrid deal? Well, we talked about in our last video, but that's pretty much saying I'm running out of space here. This 120 grand, we're going to do one fun thing. We're going to seller finance that. Big shout out to Pace. He's the one who made hybrids famous. We're going to set up a second note and seller finance this. We can talk about this more another time. Or what Pace Morby does mostly is he says, hey, your equity, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a private money lender and I'm actually going to get a loan from somebody like you or me who actually lends out money, and they're going to loan me that 120 grand, and then I'm going to give you that 120 grand cash, and then I'm going to pay back my private money lender over time. That's an option if you have a good lender, but just know that's probably going to cost you like 12% interest. So those are
Ooh,
really the
okay.
three ways to pay off equity. It's either cash, it's getting a seller getting a loan from the seller, which is seller financing. That's called a hybrid deal when you sub to and seller finance, or it's getting a loan from a third party, a private money lender,